Something like 14 human species have walked this earth, 14 members of our genus, Homo, and every single one of them, except us, has appeared and vanished within the last 2.8 million years or so. We, Homo sapiens, have been around for roughly 300,000 of those years, which sounds like a long time until you set it against the full 3 million year run of the human story. We are the newcomers, the last ones standing. And all those others, our cousins, our ancestors, the ones who didn't make it, lived in a world so different from ours that they suffered in ways we simply can't anymore. They died deaths that are, quite literally, no longer possible. Sometimes because the thing that killed them no longer exists, sometimes because the condition that killed them is now a trip to the pharmacy. Today, I want to show you those deaths, the individual, specific, terrible ends of particular people who lived hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of years ago. Because we know their stories in remarkable detail. Their bones told us. Let's start with the oldest crime scene in the world. Deep in the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain, there's a cave with a fittingly grim name, Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones. To reach it, you have to descend a vertical shaft more than 40 feet straight down, and at the bottom, archaeologists found the remains of at least 28 individuals, pre-Neanderthals living around 430,000 years ago. It's one of the richest fossil sites for human evolution anywhere on the planet. But one skull stood out. It's called Cranium 17, and it was recovered in 52 separate fragments, painstakingly reassembled over years into a nearly complete skull. And once it was whole, the problem was obvious. 2 holes punched into the frontal bone right above the left eye. Now, the first assumption was a fall. It's a deep shaft. The cave is full of rock. But there's a problem with that theory. You'd expect one injury, not 2 nearly identical ones. So the researchers did something remarkable. They applied modern forensic techniques to a 430,000-year-old skull. Contour analysis, trajectory analysis, and what they found was damning. Both fractures were made by the same object, but at different angles, meaning 2 separate, deliberate strikes. And the location matters enormously, because accidental injuries tend to land on the side of the head. Intentional violence lands on the face. This person was struck in the face, twice, deliberately, with something like a wooden spear, a stone spear tip, or a hand axe. The position of the wounds even suggests a right-handed attacker standing face to face. There were no signs of healing. Either blow would likely have been fatal. And as the researchers put it, the presence of multiple blows implies an intention to kill. This is the earliest documented murder in the human fossil record. It is a genuine cold case, 430,000 years old. No motive, no suspect, no weapon recovered. Just a body with fatal head injuries dumped down a shaft in a remote location. And that last part carries its own weight, because these 28 individuals almost certainly didn't all fall down the same hole by accident. The leading interpretation is that they were placed there, deliberately deposited, which would make Cima de los Huesos one of the earliest known funerary sites on Earth. So this single cave gives us both of the oldest things, the first murder and the first evidence that we cared enough to properly dispose of our dead. Those 2 behaviors arriving together nearly 500,000 years ago. That's who we've always been. Now let's go much further back and much more brutal. Meet OH7, a Homo habilis, one of the very oldest members of our genus living in East Africa. These were tiny people, some around 4 feet tall, fragile and near the bottom of the food chain in a world absolutely stacked with predators. And this individual was, by any measure, spectacularly unlucky, because he seems to have been killed by 2 different animals at once. The evidence on his leg tells the first half, massive puncture marks and portions of the limb simply missing, torn away. The damage is consistent with a crocodile attack, and not a modern crocodile either. The prime suspect is one of the giant extinct crocodiles that shared these wetlands, animals that reached around 25 feet and over 2 tons. A 4-foot human against that is not a fight, it's an event. But that's only half the story, because there's a second set of marks on the back of his skull, long grooves in the parietal bone, and they don't match a crocodile at all. They match a large cat, something around the size of a leopard. And the reconstruction is horrifying in its logic. The idea is that he was ambushed at the water's edge by the crocodile, turned to face it, tried to fight back, and in doing so, exposed his back to a big cat that was already there. 2 predators from 2 directions at the same moment. Neither wound shows any sign of healing. And while it's technically possible one animal scavenged him after the other killed him, the location of the cat damage, right in the spot associated with an active kill, suggests he really was taken by both. That's a death that simply cannot happen anymore. Not because the wetlands are gone, but because the animals that did it no longer exist. But here's the thing. You don't need a monster to die horribly. Sometimes all it takes is dinner. This is knm-er 1808, a Homo erectus woman who died in Kenya around 1.6 million years ago. When her partial skeleton was found in 1974, something was immediately wrong with the bones. They showed abnormal growth, excess bone turnover, and evidence of long-term massive bleeding beneath the surface. But there were no wounds. Nothing had attacked her. And to the researchers, the pattern was actually familiar because it matches a known condition: hypervitaminosis A, vitamin A toxicity. She had, over a long period, consumed far too much vitamin A, and it was slowly destroying her. And the likely culprit is grimly specific: carnivore liver. Predator livers concentrate vitamin A to extraordinary levels. Polar bear liver famously contains so much that a single meal can be dangerous to a human. Arctic explorers learned this the hard way and got very sick doing it. This woman, 1.6 million years ago, had no way of knowing. She was eating well by every instinct she had, and it was killing her. The symptoms would have been slow and miserable: weakness, headaches, skin peeling off, hair and teeth loss, and severe joint pain, which is exactly where her bones show the worst damage, in her limbs. She suffered for a long time, and she is now the oldest known case of this disease in a human being. Now, one more, and this one changes how you look at the sky. The Taung Child is one of the most famous fossils ever found. A small skull from South Africa, an Australopithecus, a young child from before our genus even existed. And for decades, nobody knew what killed him. Then researchers looked closely at the damage. Puncture marks at the bottom of the eye sockets, deep scratches on the top of the cranium. And they compared it against something surprising: the skulls of monkeys killed by modern eagles. The match was near identical. This child was taken by a large bird of prey. It struck from above, drove its talons and beak into his head and eyes, and killed him, hopefully quickly, before carrying him away. And that's the detail that stays with me. Today, when we're frightened outdoors, we look around. In the water, we look down. Nobody looks up. But for our ancestors, that was a genuine and lethal blind spot. Something was hunting them from the sky. And the story has a strange coda. The Taung Child is essentially just a skull. The body was never found. And it turned up in a remote cave with no other bones nearby, human or animal. Which raises the obvious question, how did it get there? One hypothesis is haunting. The birds used the remains up in their nest, and eventually the skull worked loose, fell and rolled into a cave, where it lay, alone, for millions of years, until we found it. And I'll leave you with one last one, because it's the most quietly devastating of the lot. Turkana Boy, one of the most complete early human skeletons ever discovered. A Homo erectus youngster from Kenya who died around 1.5 million years ago at roughly 8 or 9 years old. There's no predator damage, no violence. What killed him, most likely, was his teeth. His baby teeth came out and the adult teeth came in badly, colliding and damaging the gum tissue, which led to an abscess that never healed. And an untreated dental infection can turn into sepsis, blood poisoning, which is difficult to treat even today and was an absolute death sentence then. Weakened and sick, it's thought he collapsed face down in swampy ground and simply couldn't get up. A child killed by a toothache. And that's the thread running through all of these. A murder we can still solve after 430,000 years. A man killed by 2 extinct predators simultaneously. A woman poisoned by her own dinner. A child taken by an eagle. A boy killed by an infected tooth. Some of these deaths are impossible now because the monsters are gone, but others are impossible for a much less dramatic reason, because we invented dentistry and medicine and knew which parts of an animal not to eat, which is worth sitting with next time you're annoyed at a dental appointment. For most of the human story, that was how you died. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep looking up.